Thank you, Mark, my dear friend. And what I'd like to do right now is to help us settle in just with a couple of minutes of chanting. And I'm going to bring us into voice from wherever we are with Shefa Gold's Zed Dodi V'Zerei. Of course, Shefa sees this verse from Shir HaShirim as not the two people, the lover and the beloved, speaking to each other, but the Zeh is this moment, thisness is my beloved, this is my friend. So from wherever you are, feel free to join in. Zeh Dodi, Zeh Rei, Zeh Dodi, Zeh Rei. Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei. Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei. Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei. Zedodi, Vezerei, Zedodi, Vezerei. Just breathing into that brief chant, noticing what's changed, what's shifted in the body. So, good afternoon, everybody. I want to talk for a few minutes this morning about a text from this coming week's Parsha, from Parshat Pinchas. Pinchas isn't the most dramatic of Parshiot. It's got lots of lists of who's who in what tribe and how land will be distributed. And then the second half of the Parsha is very dry, um, uh, laying out of the bit by bit of all of the sacrifices that are offered by the Jewish people day by day, week by week, holiday by holiday. But there is a nugget smack in the middle of there of the Parsha of drama that I'm drawn to. And I'm drawn to it. It's about Moses and his having to pass on the baton to his successor, to Joshua. What really draws me to the moment, however, is the particular language that Moshe uses when he addresses God. So here's the scene. God has reminded him that because of what he did by striking the rock instead of speaking of the rock, he's not going to make it into the land of Israel, but he can go up to the Mount Abirim and look across and see from a distance, even though he will never enter. Now, at this point, Moses is not arguing it. He's not asking God to change the decree, but he's clearly filled with heartache about what's going to happen next. And what he says to God is, let the Lord, the source of the breath of all flesh, appoint someone over the community who shall go out before them and come in before them, and who shall take them out and bring them in, so that the Lord's community may not be like sheep that have no shepherd. Now, the reason I know that Moses isn't just making a suggestion here, but is deeply concerned and actually painfully concerned is the way he addresses God. He doesn't just call God Adonai here, but he calls Adonai Elohei Haruchot L'chol Basar, Lord, the source of the breath of all flesh. So why is this interesting? Aside from being a very beautiful way to refer to God as the source of the breath of all flesh, there's only one other time that Moses uses this appellation towards God. And it was a few weeks ago in Korach, when God was about to destroy the people for this terrible, terrible rebellion that the people were in the midst of. And one more time, Moses, as he has been in the past, is called upon to mollify, kind of like talk God down and keep God from destroying everybody. But in the past, he used theological arguments. He would pull out the idea of, well, God, you made promises to Abraham. So for the patriarch's sake, you've got to keep the people alive. Or he would say, but God, you've tied your name to their names for your own namesake, for Kiddush Hashem, for what the world will think of you. What will they think? What will the Egyptians think if you destroy this people after you brought them out into the desert? But at Korach, he doesn't say any of those arguments. Instead, he just says, Elohei Ruchot L'chol Basar. God, who is the source of the breath of all life, save them. He's desperate. And in his desperation, the deepest thing he could say to turn to God is simply, you are the source of unfolding life. You can't kill them. So to me, it's fascinating that here at this juncture, where he's worried about what comes after him, he uses the same language. It's as if he's saying to God, God, I'm desperate. I don't know how these people are going to survive after I, Moses, have gone. You, who are the source of the breath of all life, you must pick somebody who's going to be a great leader, someone who will watch them when they go in and out and be a good shepherd to them. And it's as if Moses, who's causing himself so much extra suffering here, is convinced that nobody could do what he has done, that there could be nobody who will be as good as he was in navigating that relationship of being able to save the Jewish people for all of the terrible things that they sometimes do. So it's fascinating to me. It's almost bordering on what Parker Palmer calls a functional atheism. Functional atheism is when you take on so much responsibility for yourself rather than sharing it with those around you because you're convinced that nobody is capable of doing the job you can do. So God could have turned to Moses at this point and says, who do you think you are? You think you're the only one? You think we can't handle this without you? But he doesn't do that. He's very compassionate. And he says to Moses, take Joshua ben Nun, who is the appointed successor, put your hands upon him, put some of your spirit into him, and Eleazar the priest will be there, and there will be a transition, and it's going to be okay. And that's what Moses does. He puts not just one hand, but two hands upon him, willing to give to Joshua any sense of power that he can. And the presence of Eleazar, who is the son of Aaron, the original high priest, Moses' brother, Aaron has already died and moved on off the scene. The presence of Eleazar is proof that these transitions are necessary and a part of life and will happen. But what I want to suggest to you is that that's not the entire answer that God gives to Moses. The first answer is this. Yes, there will be a successor who will be just as you want, and it's going to be Joshua ben Nun. And you get a chance to appoint him and see that it's going to be fine. But I don't think that's the whole answer, because the very next verse takes us into the next chapter where we suddenly leave the drama of the narrative and go into this rather dry telling of sacrifices. These are the sacrifices that one day when the temple stands, we will offer every day. These are the sacrifices that we will offer Shabbat to Shabbat. These are the sacrifices that we will offer in the springtime at Pesach, and in the summertime at Shavuot, and at the beginning of the new year, of Rosh Hashanah, and the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and the ingathering of Sukkot. And I'd like to suggest that it's not an accident that this calendar, this well-known calendar of the book of Numbers, appears right here, just as Moses is contemplating his own passing. Because I think God is telling Moses that this is part of the answer to Moses. This is part of the comfort to Moses, is to know that Moses, it doesn't depend on you. It doesn't even have to depend on Joshua or on any leader, because the people will be carried by the practice. The people will be carried by the practice, the daily practices, the Sabbath practices, the seasonal practices of the liberation of spring at Pesach, of Shavuot, the fullness of the summer harvest, the ingathering in the fall. The practice and the seasons will carry them. So don't worry. In essence, the message to Moses and to us is a great decentering. We sometimes think that we carry so much weight on our shoulders. We carry the weight on our shoulders because we think that no one else can do this. And what the Torah is reminding us in a very gentle way is to decenter that. It's not about me. It's not about who succeeds us in our particular jobs. We carry each other through time as a people, through the practices that we share. And even that is carried by something larger, by the seasonal flow, which is much greater than us. And I think that's what gave Moses his true sense of comfort. And I'm so grateful that God does this, because it could have been otherwise. He could have chastised him for being so self-centered, but he realized, you know what? Moses is in enough pain right now. Let's ease the pain. And all of us at times are in so much pain for so many things that we needlessly carry with us. And we need to remind ourselves that we are really carried by Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar, the God who is the breath of all living flesh. We feel that breath in the rhythm of the seasons, and we feel that Godness in the rhythm of our own breath. So I'm going to invite you now to sit. Find a place in your chair where it's most comfortable for you to be both alert and relaxed. Just open up your attention to what's happening in your body in this moment. You might notice sensations of coolness or warmth in your fingers and toes. You might notice vibration of energy on your skin, an ache or a tightness in the body. Allow yourself to notice whatever is arising as true in your body right now, without judgment, without needing to change, without needing things to be any different than they are right now. And turn your attention a little bit more inward, just to the breath, finding the place in the body where it's easiest to just be with the rising and passing of breath. That might be in your belly, for some of you it might be in your chest, for some of you your go-to place might be just the tip of your nose, noticing cool air on an in-breath, tickling the hairs in your nostrils, filling your head cavity, warmer air on an out-breath. So just find that place and be with breath. Allow yourself to be held by Elohei Ruchot Lechol Basar, God who is the source of the breath of all living flesh. allow yourself to feel connected to that divine presence of the source of breath with every in-breath and with every out-breath. Set an intention for the next few minutes to be just with that feeling of breath and the sensation of being held by Elohei Ruchot L'chol Basar, God who is breath unfolding in this and in every body. And we'll sit this way for the next few minutes. Mark, I'll turn this back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Looking forward to some conversation. A beautiful practice in a few moments. But for now, friends, we seal our practice as we do every day by offering those in mourning, those who are observing a yard site, opportunity to join in Mourner's Kaddish, and inviting you share in the chat box if you'd like the name or names of those you're holding in your heart today. And I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit for Kaddish. Yitkadal, Yikadash, Rabbi.
Amen.
Amen.
Israel. Agala, Bizyan, Karib, Demru, Amen. Amen. Amaya. Yitbarak, Yishtabak, Yitkar, Yitraman, Nase. Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmei, Kusha,
Elam,
Elam, Kol Bishirata, Bishirata, Tushamata, Menekamata, Damuran, Beama, Amen. Yehi Shlama, Rabba Min Shamaya, V'chaim, Ayinu, V'Kol Yisrael, V'Mru, Amen. Ose Shalom, Yamama, Huya Se Shalom, Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael, V'Mru, Amen.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, hope you, if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow for practice with Rabbi Susan Leiter on Thursday with Rabbi Marcelo Bronstein leading us for the first time in this series. You're invited to stay on for some conversation with Rabbi Dan Liben about this beautiful teaching and practice today. I want to thank the meditation group at Temple Natick, at Temple Israel of Natick, for honoring your beloved rabbi and teacher, Rabbi Dan Liben, today on the occasion of Dan's retirement. So for those who are leaving us now, we wish you a safe rest of the day. Hope to see you soon, tomorrow or sometime soon. And if you have questions for Rabbi Liben, please put them in the chat box and preface them with question in all caps and try to keep an eye on that. For those of you who are maybe wondering where I am actually at IJS World Headquarters in Midtown Manhattan today, where everything is lovely except for the internet service. So I'm on my phone, but all is well, all is well. So Dan, I can't tell on my phone whether we are co-spotlighted. Adi, if you can co-spotlight us, we're good?
We
okay.
are. Yeah.
I will try to, it's a little harder to keep an eye on the chat when you're on the phone, so.
I'm not able to spotlight both of you at the same time for some reason, but whoever is talking will be spotlit.
Okay, well then let's let Dan do most of it. Dan, it was just such a wonderful, I don't know if you were on yesterday when Rabbi Daniel Silverstein was leading us, but he also started, his jumping off point was that same reference where Moses refers to God as Elohei HaRuchot Basar, the God of the spirit of all flesh. And he took it in a different direction there, just to connect the dots. Yesterday was talking about how that was an expression of God beseeching God for compassion for people who are but flesh and blood. Maybe Adi, you can mute everybody else also. And I think maybe we didn't mute everybody.
Mark, you need to unmute yourself now.
Okay, there we go. All right, so Dan, you took it in another beautiful direction, connecting that with the fact that Parshat Pinchas is actually the most read, I think, it's probably the most read part of the Torah in the actual Torah reading cycle because it's used on all the holidays and Rosh Chodesh. It has all the readings about the additional offerings. And so I just want to clarify the connection you're making between that reference, that name of that appellation of God that Moses is using, and the idea that you connected the idea of God as being the God of the winds, the breaths, the spirit, with this idea that the rest of the portion brings us back to ongoing daily practice, spiritual practice on a regular basis. So I just want to make sure that to recap your teaching accurately. How'd I do?
I think you did a really good job.
Want to add or clarify
Yeah,
anything?
and
Good.
the other connecting piece is that specifically it's an answer to Moses's desire to micromanage what the future is going to be like.
Right.
And God it's a way of shifting to Elohei Ruchot L'chol Basar and to the flow of time and space decenters us from our need to be at the center and to be so self-important and to think that the world depends on us.
Right. So I know this is purely hypothetical in your case, as you're retiring from being rabbi of how many years at Temple
30
Israel?
years at Temple Israel, yeah.
Okay, right. So, and of course, your beloved congregants describe you as irreplaceable.
See, it's interesting because when I heard you say that, of course, I was flattered, but I also felt on a certain level I failed.
Well,
because that's the point. None of us are replaceable.
Right. Yeah. So that was exactly your point. However, what I'd like, if you're willing, I don't know, I want to invite you to be as transparent as you feel comfortable being, because this is a teaching about, as you said, about any transitional moment, but it really involves all of us because it all has to do with the ego, right? Placing ourselves at the center, which is, speaking for myself, where I spend most of my time. And so the practice decenters us in some way. And that becomes really obvious in a situation like yours right now, where you have been really central to the spiritual life of that community, and you're transitioning into out of that role. So maybe you can speak a little bit about what that's like for you, because even though you're right, I know that in your heart of hearts, you want this to be not at all about you, right? Maybe talk a little bit about what that's like for you.
That's a really good question. I think I'm less evolved than I thought I was. Leading up to this for the last couple of years, I thought I was really prepared to make this transition. And I've discovered that, and I'm sure it's not unique to me, but I was forced to realize like I'm no different from everybody else in this. As it got closer, I definitely felt the clingingness. So, for example, we have an interim rabbi who'll be coming in for the year, but he's not starting in August until August 1. So I told my office, I'm not clearing out of my office until the middle of July. I don't want to leave the space yet. So it is, I feel like that the practice has helped me so much to prepare for this over the years, which is really great. And at the same time, in all humility, that's why we need to keep on practicing, because the ego keeps pushing us and coming up and popping up and appealing to other parts of us that need to be taken care of, but may not be as healthy and as evolved as we would like. So It's interesting. It's really been interesting for me to watch.
Thanks for being willing to share that. Appreciate that. I also want to put it in the context of where we are in the Jewish year, because we are in the 3 weeks, and as we were talking a little bit yesterday about that Sunday, the 17th of Tammuz, began this 3 weeks and represents this crack, the cracking, the breaching of the walls, right, as it were, the crack in the heart, which yesterday, the terminology for Tisha B'Av, of the heart falling completely open at that point. These 3 weeks being a process of really opening, overcoming the hard outside, the shell, and in a sense, letting the self dissolve. That's what's called for at this time of year. So it seems to go very well with, the process you're describing. And even though in your case, like, it's very dramatic, big dramatic, vocational moment, but it's universal for all of us. I mean, this is really the practice, right? About letting, moment by moment, letting go of ourselves, opening ourselves up, and coming back to, like, to get to your nechemta, to your, the comfort there. Oh, this breath. Oh, this moment. Oh, this practice. It was never about me. It's never about me, Our friend and colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Slater, put it really beautifully in a staff study session yesterday. And I'm going to paraphrase it poorly here, but it was really about, it's not, it's not at all about us, but we have to be there. Which was, I thought, a great way of capturing the paradox of, it doesn't mean that we disappear or that we're invisible, that we don't matter, but that we do matter and we have to be there, and it's not about us at the same time.
What the practice has taught me over the years is that a lot of the language that as rabbis we're taught to use is really not very helpful. The language of my congregation. It's not my congregation. It's a congregation of lots and lots of people. And when you're the rabbi, you have to make a lot of decisions and you have to help shape that and move it. But you also know that this congregation has a life of its own that began before you and will continue after you're gone. And that the best you can do in any job is to do the job as well as you can with as open a heart as you can in the case of a rabbi, for the time that you are there, for this moment. But you can't, I also discovered over thinking about this over the last couple of years, that the word legacy is a really dangerous word and one that should probably be dropped from the language. It leads you down very destructive paths. When people talk about legacy, rabbis can't talk about legacy in their congregation. Congregations need to go and change in whatever way they're going. And because that's life, that's the flow. That's what we learn from practice. So, right. Yeah, I feel like the practice both made me better at being a rabbi during the years I was doing it, and is helping me at this juncture.
Yeah. Harris Sokoloff, just catching in the chat, is just bringing it back to the idea of servant leadership, which really, I mean, straight from Torah, right? It's really. And this is the great lesson of Moses. Every time he thinks it's about him, or he has to carry the people, or it's all about him, he's reminded, sometimes gently and sometimes not so gently, by God, like, no. And even from the get-go at the burning bush, right, where he thinks, oh, it's about me. How could I possibly do that? And God keeps saying, no. You don't have to do it, So I really love the fact that Torah, in its description of Moses as a leader and his role, and you brings it home, and we're going to transition to Deuteronomy shortly, where he goes through that whole process of making peace with it, and he's not real happy at the beginning either.
No, he's not. And we that's what I love about the book, and what I love about the way Moses is depicted. Can you imagine if the Torah had been written differently, and that Moses actually got to cross over with everybody to the promised land? It would have been a disaster, because then, what happens when you achieve a goal? The next day you set a new goal. It's not like anyone ever achieves all their goals. And so that Moses can be our teacher for every single human being, no matter who we are and what our role is in our life. For Moses can be that Moses is our teacher in that you can never achieve it all, that at a certain point you need to let go, that's the nature of life, that's the nature of the flow of the universe. That's what makes the book so amazing. Imagine if they had written it differently, if they had given him a happier ending. He would be a superhero and not a person. He couldn't be our model anymore.
No. And no grave to find either. Right? Yeah. George Washington too, for that matter. Right. All of which is to go to say, like, we're toggling back and forth between talking about leadership, but I want to bring it back to the universal quality, which is really about, we're all in that boat.
Absolutely.
right? We're all thinking it's about me, and I'm the protagonist of this story. And really the practice, just for people to drive that home, is, moment by moment, is catch ourselves in that. And like you said, laugh at ourselves to say, who are you kidding? You think,
and when we don't, and we take ourselves seriously the way Moses was at the beginning of the section that I read, look at the pain he put, the unnecessary suffering that he's bringing to himself by thinking that it's all about him. It's really sad.
It is really sad, but stick around to the end of the story, because those last few Torah portions are pretty good, right? Gets to a very right. Lo v'shamayim, it's not in the heavens, right? It's in you.
He gets some great words. Yeah.
Yeah. The best for last, really. So Dan, I just want to take the opportunity here, in front of, there are a lot of people here I know who love you, and a lot of people who don't know you, and hopefully want to let them know that it's really great that you're going to continue to offer meditation minyan for your community, and that I want to encourage people to take advantage. Maybe say something about when that happens and when people and how people could join if they're interested.
That's great. If anyone's interested in dropping into our mindfulness-based Sunday morning service, which tries to use a whole set of different modalities of spiritual practices, including davening as one of them, that happens from 9 to 10 on Sunday mornings. It's a hybrid minyan, so some people show up in person, but many people are joining us online, which is wonderful. And I think probably the easiest way to get access to that is to email me, and I'll send you directly the link for that. And my email is simply rabbi at TIOF, as in Temple Israel of Natick.org. So that's TIOF Natick.org. We also have a sit group on Thursday mornings, which is, we decided we're not going to go back to in person. It's going to be online. That's every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. If people feel like a little bit of teaching and a little bit of talking, and then sitting at 8 to about 8:40 every morning. Also, just send me an email, and I'll be glad to send you a link for that as well, if anyone is looking for an 8 o'clock in the morning sitting group. Again, my address is rabbi at TIOF.Natick.org, and that's, yes, Eastern Standard Time. We're in Natick, Massachusetts. So Eastern Standard Time. Yeah.
Yeah, Natick is NATICK for folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try that again. Let's put that properly into the chat, somebody.
Yeah, Dan, would you mind putting it in the chat so people can have that?
I think I can do that.
So I'm sure people who have not met Rabbi Dan Liben until now can see, what a special human being and rabbi you are, Dan. And I didn't mention even that you are a longtime board member of the Institute for Jewish Spirituality too. So thank you for that too. And I'm so glad that people will stay connected to your teaching and through the practice. And I just want to wish you, Dan, for this transition, ease of spirit, the ability to take in all the appreciation I know your people and love that people feel for you, your colleagues and your congregants. And may you enjoy a lot of freedom, a lot of time to do what gives you pleasure and joy in life. And I'm sure you'll be back here to lead us again on the daily sit.
And Mark, I also just want to say how grateful I am to you. All of us are so grateful. What you have done during this last year plus 3 months or so with these days, creating this wonderful container of practice is unbelievable and such a blessing. And it's part of the larger blessing of IJS, which for me, and for more than 15 years now or whatever, is the gift that just keeps on giving. So thank you to you and to all the wonderful people you work with, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thanks. Okay. Thanks, Adi. Thanks to Rabbi Dan Liben. Thanks to the Dan Liben Fan Club who sponsored today. And we hope to see you tomorrow for practice with Rabbi Susan Leiter, who'll be joining us from Tiburon, California. And Thursday, Rabbi Marcelo Bronstein from Costa Rica. That's a first. Okay, everyone, be safe and well, stay cool. and say